Ready to begin.
Hello, everybody. I see a lot of people are still connecting with the audio, so we'll give it just a couple more seconds here. Those people are joining in. Here at the onset, if we can, just everybody, if you can, please mute your audios at the beginning. We'll certainly open it up for discussion after we hear from our special guest. If we can, here at the beginning, just ask everybody to please mute your systems. That would be wonderful. And we have a couple others still joining, so we'll go ahead and give it just a couple more seconds here before we get started. I do want to welcome everybody to our event this afternoon, and to anyone joining from Iraq or out in the region, a good late evening. We appreciate you being with us. If we can go ahead and ask everybody, thank you, to please mute at the beginning. We appreciate it. For those of you who I haven't met, I think I've met pretty much everybody on here, but if I haven't, I'm Steve Lutz. I'm president of the U.S. Iraq Business Council at the Chamber, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Yana Burris, who helps manage the council at the Chamber and is my colleague there. And I want to take a time here at the beginning of our session here at the onset to welcome our distinguished guest who's joining us on camera there. His Excellency, Dr. Khalid Al-Najm, Minister of Planning for Iraq. And of course, I have to say, we also always appreciate the opportunity to engage our friend who's with him, Iraq's ambassador to the United States, Dr. Farid Yassin, and his wonderful team there at the embassy. We appreciate all that they do. As many of you know, the Chamber has an active program across the entire Middle East. We're actually the largest department in our international division at the Middle East. And what we take great pride in is being home to the U.S. Iraq Business Council. And I do want to acknowledge and thank many of our companies who are on here with us today for being a part of this virtual event. And we work closely with you, and we are grateful for your continued support and active participation in our program. And I want to just take a moment to acknowledge two of our newest members, the American University of Iraq in Baghdad and Procter & Gamble. So we're grateful to have those two new members on board and full-fledged members and part of our U.S. Iraq Business Council. And Your Excellency, it's important to note that we have companies really across the range of the economy, across a number of different sectors and industries that we work with. So that's important because I think we as an organization engage across the breadth of the economy. I also want to mention, of course, as we come through a time when the global community faces a lot of challenges and uncertainty due to the COVID and a whole range of other associated issues, at the U.S. Iraq Business Council, we do remain very committed to working with both governments on behalf of our members with an eye toward growing and deepening our bilateral economic relationship. And it's really important, I think, that we understand there may be turbulence in the short term, but that we will continue, to advocate and support American companies that are doing business and investing in Iraq. And we'll also look for ways to expand those ties and think creatively about the range of activities and policy reforms that can be taken, as well as, inshallah, to organizing events and bringing business delegations back to Iraq as the conditions enable us and allow us to do so. So we're very eager to do that. And we do believe that having a strong economy and strong ties with the United States can be a stabilizing agent, and at the end of the day can help foster greater independence for Iraq. We're, of course, Your Excellency, realistic and understand that in the near term, we know that there's an impending election. So we know that the focus of many will be elsewhere, but we're not going anywhere. The U.S. Iraq Business Council, the U.S. Chamber, has been around for many years, and we will continue to look forward and continue to engage in this trade and investment relationship. And that really brings us to today, Your Excellency, as we discussed. We really do welcome hearing from you about the work that you've been undertaking at the Ministry of Planning and your thoughts on how we can work to grow the relationship and involve U.S. companies in the opportunities there in Iraq. Before we turn the floor over to you, though, I did mention, Ambassador, we're grateful for all of your support and the strong working relationship we have with you. So before we hear from our special guests, I'd love to turn the floor over to you, Ambassador Yassin, to offer some initial kind of welcoming thoughts, and then we'll introduce His Excellency properly and hear from him. But Ambassador, we'd love to turn to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. You're a friend, and you as well as all your colleagues, especially the chamber. And when I'll share this with the other participants, when I introduced you to the minister yesterday, I pointed out two events that signal the importance and the role of the chamber with regard to Iraq. 2 years ago, you led the largest delegation to go to Iraq, largest delegation you took anywhere in 2019. And then last year, if you recall, when the Prime Minister came here, the chamber organized for him actually a very successful in-person event here at the Willard. And that was also a unique event that signaled the importance that the chamber attaches to this relationship, as well as the importance attached by its participants. And I can assure you that this had the greatest effect with me and my countrymen. I want to say a couple words on the minister before I turn it over to you and to him. So he's a new breed of leader. He's a guy who came in with credentials and with accomplishments. He is, I know many of us are engineers. He himself is an engineer. In fact, he's a professor of engineering. In fact, the president of the university. He's trained as a civil servant, actually a civil engineer. Has done wonders with the University of Battal that now is acknowledging quite a bit of recognition regionally. And then he came in to become Minister of Planning. And the Ministry of Planning in Iraq is quite important because it actually lays the road ahead for what we want the Iraq to look like in the future. So they, if you will, are in a sense the captain of the future developments of Iraq, its economy, its infrastructure. And the other thing that I want to mention is that he now has actually a signal role in the government. He's not only Minister of Planning, he's also Deputy Prime Minister. And the one thing that I retained from the wonderful dinner we had yesterday, where we met with Steve and others from the US government, is that he said, look, I'm not here for me. I'm not here as a politician. I have something I need to do and I will do it. And I don't care about circumstances because I'm not running for office. So it's a 100% commitment to the task at hand that the government has to take, which is to implement its electoral program and to carry out elections in October. And I can assure you that me and my colleagues are very comfortable and very proud to have him here with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Your Excellency.
By the way, and I have to say, it doesn't come easy to me to say nice things about my ministers. So I have to realize that.
Well, I think you have said even better than I talk to myself. So thank you very much for saying that. Maybe I don't deserve all these nice words that you have already said. As His Excellency said, I'm not a politician, so I'm academic. If I want to do something, I go straight forward to the point without turning, without playing, manipulating with the world. I think the Iraqi-US businessman relations needs to be strained. If I take an example, because my background is civil engineer, which love concrete, so the relation like the concrete, we need to strengthen or reinforce them with the steel bars. So the trade, like the steel bars, to train to take over the tension, take over the stress from the concrete. As far as I know about the relations, about the companies that already been working in Iraq, we've got specifically an oil sector. We have very important companies, and and electricity as well. All of the American companies are welcome in Iraq, and this government, you may know that how this government was formed. It comes to solve some internal problems in Iraq. However, we had a fully understanding for the obstacles that facing the companies that been working in Iraq. One of them issuing a visa, which is, for me, it's shame to talk about. For businessman wants to do investment in Iraq, and it takes maybe weeks for the visa, and this issue has been solved 3 weeks ago, and that should become to implementation within short time. The visa should be issued for those people who want to invest their money or want to do a business in Iraq and the airport within short time. I'm talking about hours, even maybe less than an hour. So that's ongoing. We need to make sure everything goes in the right track. And I had a delegation from Sterling Energy last week in my office. We talked about how to improve the electricity plants, and I've been asked from, even to be honest, from the Prime Minister to facilitate all the work for the American company, and I did my best to make it easy for them, and we are in the process. Hopefully within a couple of months, we will see the stellar energy works in Iraq. And if I'm not mistaken, I have heard some guy from the American University in Baghdad, but I have a request to open a medical college on my table last week. So I postponed it till I back to Baghdad to visit the American University. I supported them. And by the way, I was one of the members. We choose the staff members 2018, and I have met the president of the university. We think existing such university is really important for our students. Instead of sending them outside of Iraq, it will be a valuable addition for Iraqi higher education system. I don't want to take the time and talk about the relations. I'm happy to answer any questions if there is any of them.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you so much, for those points, and it's always refreshing to hear from a non-politician in a political position. So, as the ambassador pointed out, it's always a refreshing review, and I like your engineering perspective on concrete strengthened by the steel bars. So that's we might have to borrow that one. Your Excellency, I wanted, before I open it up to the floor, you had said something that I should know, but it just really crystallized in my mind last night. You were talking about the youth population, and I think, if I get the numbers right, I hope that 65% of Iraq's population is under 30, if I remember right, or 35.
Yes.
If you could comment, as the Minister of Planning, obviously, there's the things that are in the here and now, but then there's the more strategic outlook. And obviously, I would love to hear your thoughts, because you are talking to a bunch of companies, on your perspective on how it's important to grow the private sector to have career opportunities and job opportunities, because all these people can't go in to government. In fact, we know the numbers don't work. The numbers they don't add up. So you have to grow the private sector. So would welcome your thoughts on, how that's understood in the government, and frankly, your perspective on that. Where do you see the future for, this burgeoning Iraqi youth?
Well, this government has presented the white paper. I think everyone heard something about this, which is a reform strategic plan for reforming the economy. One of these aspects is to increase or to support the private sector. And honestly, private sector has looking for a stable security situation to do that. This is one of the most important challenges that have faced the private sector. And the second thing is the bank system, the financial system. All of these things is also important for the private sector. We have been working to solve these issues. The first one is related to internal and external factors, and it will be deeply negotiated next month when the Prime Minister visits DC. And the second one, which is related to how to facilitate in the engagement of the youth with the private sector. We understood that private sector is looking for the skilled workers, and the Iraqi universities has a system which is give the degree with a certificate, but the graduated people needs to be trained to have skills to be welcomed in the private sector. We issued 3 months ago a framework for this issue, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs has a program now working, I think, with, if I'm not mistaken, with US aid and with UNDP to implement this program to improve the skills of the workers, the youth. We have a problem with the English language because most of the international companies, they are looking for people who knows English, not just Arabic. And even with the engineering college, with the medical college, we use the both system. I mean, in terms of study, Arabic and English. So I think American university will be a very good tool to improve the English skills for our people. In general, the Iraqi graduated, I mean, who study in Iraqi university, they have got a very strong theoretical background, but they need to be trained to improve their skills. As I said, American university, it will be a very good place for them. I will visit the American university to discuss this issue. We've been working with the British Council as well, but we are talking about hundreds, thousands of them. How can we accommodate places, find chairs for all of them? But in general, there is an opportunity for the private sector to be grown with if the white paper is implemented in the next government, the coming government, as well as there is a law under legislation in the parliament, which is triple P, private-public sector relationship. How we can make a relationship, a strong relationship between the private sector and the public sector to make a partnership. If this law will be legislated soon, many problems will be solved. In Iraq, we've got more than 100 companies with billions of dollars. It has got, lands and factories, but it needs to be improved. With the Iraqi situation, I mean, economic situation, we cannot provide all their requests. We cannot afford all the money to improve the factory lines and to improve their products. So they are looking for a private sector partnership. I think within the 4 or 5 coming months, the law will be legislated, hopefully before the end of the term of the parliament. So there is a big chance for the private sector to invest in the agriculture and the industry with many, many different sectors. And the other thing is the health sector. Most of the Iraqi people, are traveling outside Iraq for their treatments. And now we are looking for companies to run our new hospitals. We've got 3 hospitals, newly established and up to date in terms of the structural design and the equipment. It's very new equipped, but we have a shortage in the technical staff who run these hospitals. And I think this is another sector for the private sector to run the hospitals, to make an agreement with the Ministry of Health as well. We've got so many stadiums, and because the Daesh when occupied Iraq, most of the Iraqi project, development project was stopped, and with a percentage maybe 80–90% of implementation. So even back to the beginning of our talk, which is 65% of Iraqi is youth. So they need, for their sport activities and going outside. That's another aspect for investments for the private sector. If we keep talking, there are so many. Iraqi like a virgin land. So first come, first win. And we are welcome all of the companies from the US, from all over the world. Recently, we have agreement with Egyptian companies and Jordanian companies. If there is any company, they can work as a third party for them, make a relation between Iraqi, Egyptian, and US companies. In terms of just to make a step forward for the Egyptian to accept the challenge. And they have received a letter from the Ministry of Industry. In Egypt, they will visit, there is a big delegation will visit Iraq next week, just to search the opportunity that can work with the Iraqi companies.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You covered a lot of important ground there. And on that last one, I would say we actually have had one member, maybe 2, that have worked with the Roscom comes to mind as a major Egyptian company to do projects in Iraq. Very interesting to hear how you talk about, and it doesn't surprise me, having been the president of Anbar University, the primacy, the importance you place on training the workforce of the future to match, the jobs that are there and available in Iraq. And I would certainly praise the government, the Prime Minister, Dr. Alloway, yourself, for the white paper, and know that many of the reforms in there are things that certainly the U.S. Chamber and the U.S. Iraq Business Council have been supportive of. So we're grateful for that. What I'd love to do is we were in touch with a few companies in advance of this. We'll certainly have time, I think, to open it up to the floor, but I'd love to call on a few of them that we connected with in advance that expressed an interest in offering a comment, making a question to you. And first, let me go to Chris Bowers at Chevron. Chris.
Hello, Minister. Thank you very much for this, and thank you for arranging for the Chamber for arranging the meeting. Minister, I apologize for my English accent in this American setting, but I think you also are familiar with English accents from your time in the UK, so I hope it's not too much of a shock. I was going to ask about demography, and I think you answered most of what I would have asked. Apart from stressing, I think, it's a tremendous opportunity for Iraq, because, when you look at some of the great growth stories in the past, and for instance in East Asia, they came about because there was, or one of the factors that contributed was a large youth bulge, and I think you've got that, and some of the measures you talk about on private sector are very important. But I was going to ask something around another aspect of your responsibilities, which is around Iraq's relationship with the World Bank and the IMF and other international institutions. I was wondering how they were going. We tended to hear quite a bit a few months ago about the IMF. A little bit less recently, unless I'm mistaken. But how do you think the IMF and the World Bank can help Iraq, and in which areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will have a meeting, I think tomorrow, with the World Bank. And we have received a delegation 2 weeks ago from the World Bank to improve the cooperation between us. I think we have so many projects in the Ministry of Planning. By the way, the rule of Ministry of Planning is to plan the strategic plans for the development. With cooperating with the Ministry of Finance to prepare the budget. So half of the budget, which is related to the development and the project, including the oil project, all of this in the responsibility of the Ministry of Planning. And the other part of the budget is responsibility for the Ministry of Finance. So to answer your question, we have a very strong relationship with both of IMF and World Bank. We've been working closely, and there are many strategic plans that have done in the Ministry of Planning in cooperation with the World Bank team that are working, whether they are in Iraq or outside of Iraq. With the IMF, there is a very clear cooperation, and they will support the Iraqi budget for this year with a certain amount, and I think the relation is going very well.
Chris, thank you for the question, and Your Excellency, thank you for the insights.
Thank you.
Turning next, I'd like to turn to Steve Kim from Track Development. Your Excellency, working on a project actually in the Anbar province. But Steve, let me turn it to you. If you, hopefully you're with us. I can't see everybody. So
I'm here.
hopefully you're, there we go.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. Your Excellency, hello, Mr. Ambassador, hello again. Your Excellency, I represent a company called Track Development, and Track's been in the Iraq radar for quite a bit, have been working on the Abaniya project, the Abaniya New City project for a while now. During the pandemic period and for the past year, we have developed a very in-depth business plan, a financial plan, with the support of some of the top 5 consulting groups throughout the world, and also with some local Iraqi organizations. We've just kind of completed all of the necessary documents, and we are now looking at moving forward with the NIC. We've been talking and communicating with the Ambari governor quite a bit, and he would like for us to move forward with the on the federal at the ministerial level. And so just wanted to let you know that we're actually going to be in Washington, D.C. On Wednesday, and if you had any free moments in your schedule, we would love to provide you with our documents, all the information that we have, and just give you a short briefing on our project in Abaniya. It's a new city project, but of course, in every new city, it takes quite a bit of work. This is in many phases, encompassing about 11 years. We're obviously focused on phase 1, but this is something that we believe will really not only change the landscape, the economic and business development arena over in Anbar province, but also we're hoping all of Iraq. It's a project that we can emulate not just in Abaniya, but also in Baghdad and in other parts of the region. And we're very proud of kind of what we have done. And we would really like to have some free moment to be able to discuss a little bit with you while you're in town.
Thank you very much. I think I will offer you not few moments, half a day. You know why? Because I'm from Anbar originally, so this is I have seen this project myself. So I'm really interested to meet you and to find out whether if there is any problem that we can solve. I can talk to the governorate of Anbar directly, and if there is any problem in the central government in any ministry, I can work that personally, do it as fast as we can. On Wednesday, maybe in the evening, we can meet here in the hotel or anywhere in the embassy.
Wonderful.
I don't mind.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll work with your staff to find a time. Thank you.
Sure.
Your Excellency, I have to say, I think Steve will be traveling in from Chicago. So as I always say, make sure he brings a deep dish pizza with him. You know, their specialty there. So don't let him off the hook, you know, have him bring that nice pizza with him. Next up, I would like to go to a longtime friend and member of the council, Doug Ollivant. I know a great thought leader, but also brings a lot of relevant business ideas to the table. Doug, again, I'm limited on who I can see, so I believe you're with us, but from Manitou International, I'd like to go to Doug Ollivant for a comment or question.
Thanks, Steve, and I'm here if you can hear me. Your Excellency, thank you very much for your talk. Ambassador Fareed, great to see you. I liked your concrete analogy very much because I think for the US business community, the rule of law and clear, understandable published regulation is that concrete that the US business community needs to build on. I'm a managing partner at Manitou International. We've been advising companies doing business or trying to do business in Iraq for about 9 years now, since just after the end of occupation. My experience is that outside of those companies doing business through the US somehow, those working on FMS contracts or servicing the State Department or on a USAID contract, there are not very many success stories in Iraq. Oil and gas and electricity are their own thing. That's a special category. But outside of that, you'll have to look very hard to find success stories. I would love for us to have a day where we can assemble on a panel like this 3 or 4 CEOs who can talk about how, while the negotiations were hard and difficult, once the contract was signed, they received all the necessary permits, the materials weren't held up for bribes at the ports, the work visas were processed in a timely manner, the tax rate that was enforced at the tax office was identical to the published tax rates, that once invoices were approved, they were paid as agreed upon in a timely manner, and that final payment at the end of the contract came in a very timely and reasonable manner after final inspection of the project. Again, I can't speak to oil and gas or electricity, but I suspect that outside of those sectors, there are no CEOs that I can bring to a forum like this who will give that testimony and say that they've had a successful experience inside Iraq. So I guess in some ways, this is a long comment, but I'll pose it as a question. How can we work with the government of Iraq to ensure that there is this concrete of rule of law, of clear regulation that we can build these contracts on, and hopefully the United States can be part of your long-term plan for your infrastructure, physical, healthcare, and otherwise?
Well, thank you very much for raising this issue, because when we talk about the American or all the international companies, mainly we are talking about both sectors that you have already mentioned, which are the oil sector and the electricity. And unfortunately, they are connected together. We still have problem with the electricity problem. However, I would recommend it for the oil companies to invest in the residential sector. And this is one of the most shortage we have in Iraq. We need more than 2 million units nowadays. And if we consider the increasing in the population, if we consider 65% of the total Iraqi population is less than 30, so we need in the future, maybe 10 years ahead, we need millions of residential units. So this is I want to say that. To answer your questions, I think the investment law in Iraq, one of the best of all over the world for just how we mentioned, just to a basic, because it offers the land almost for free, which is you cannot find it anywhere in the world. So if there is any problems, tell us, we can work together, either your company or any companies. If there is under the authorization of any ministry, I will talk to them. If there is no way to solve it with such ministry or the certain ministry, we can take it to the Council of Ministries, we can solve it. So I don't think there is unsolvable problems in this regard. We are open-minded. My office always is open for all companies to work together. At the beginning of my speech, I gave an example for Stellar Energy, Total. More than welcome to talk in some details to find out how we can help you.
Doug, you look like you were going to say something.
I will just make one final point, and I very much appreciate your offer to do that, Your Excellency. But I think this is part of the problem. We have many, many senior Iraqi officials at the investment offices, in the ministries, at the Prime Minister's office, who will tell us, if you have a problem, just come see us. We need systematic fixes so that we don't have to go see a minister to get something fixed. I guess in some ways I'm like trying to put myself out of business here, but you shouldn't have to have someone who can go see a minister to get your problem fixed. We need reliable rule of law and regulation in Iraq so that when you go to the window and see the person at the window at the appropriate office, you're getting the right and proper answer there in a clear and understandable manner. And we're not having to go call a minister to fix some routine piece of administration. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Well, what I meant by saying come to my office just to understand the detailed problems. It's not my job to solve all the problems, but my job to understand, because you have been talking in general. Indeed, there are some problems, but I need to know the detailed problems to work out to solve it. So if you don't mind, you can send me, I'll provide you with my email, some details. Where is the problem? Either in the investment office, where is it in the ex-ministry, where is it in the airport, where, just to work out. That's what I meant.
And Your Excellency, as the ambassador knows, the council for many cycles now has kind of on behalf of the members provided input on a range of different policy issues, regulatory issues for consideration that we provide to both governments, usually in advance of something like a strategic dialogue or a TIFA discussion. We're glad to provide you, and I think that captures probably some of the things that I know Doug has provided before and others that are on here today. So we'll be sure, make sure to share that with you, because I think that kind of catalogs some of those concerns that perennial concerns or things that have been brought to our attention before by our member companies. So we'll be sure to share that with you. I'm glad to do that.
Well, I'd like to add a point.
Please.
So the idea is to resolve these issues systematically. And in order, in some way, to put myself out of the business, because I can tell you that, as you know, the embassy, my colleagues here, we practice an open door policy, and we transmit all the problems as quickly as we can to that. There has been some progress. I mean, the decision by the government to grant visas at the airport has not been easy to come. We've been working on it for a number of years, but it's there, and it is being implemented. And I can assure you that fairly soon, I think we'll see other issues addressed in the same manner.
That's great, and having you, Ambassador, and the team there, that's been indispensable. Having you as advocates, essentially in lockstep with the business community to press for those reforms. That's been grateful and much appreciated. and the visas are absolutely an important step, very much so. So thank you.
Can I just add one more point?
Of course.
We're always here to take your input and to transmit it to the decision makers in Baghdad. But I think it's really important and to the advantage of the companies that want to do business in Europe to have a presence of their own in Baghdad. That would help.
Yeah. Thank you both for that. I see, I did want to go to our friends at Gibbs International, another relatively new member of the U.S. Iraq Business Council. I think you're muted.
Yes, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Excellency, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Cenk. I am the part of Gibbs International. Gibbs International is based in South Carolina, USA, which is more than 50 years old company. It has various parts from textile machinery to energy field. It has also investments in North Iraq or Iraq during a couple of years ago. I'm in engineering part of Gibbs International. Gibbs is making various projects throughout the world. It's the largest reused textile machinery dealer in the world with more than 3,000 complete plants sold over 90 countries. And knowing that Iraq has got huge petroleum reserves and production and a lot of young population, we could offer a lot of projects to turn their petroleum products into fibers and textile products, which will give potentially millions of jobs, which they have their own population to use it as well as to be exported. Saudi Arabia is a good example of that, with SABIC is having now over $95 billion worth, making a lot of polyester fiber and polypropylene fibers, which can be used in various productions. If Excellencies demanded of our expertise, I am based in Istanbul, Turkey, which is having a logistic advantage to meet in anywhere in Iraq whenever we are required. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will pass this message for those people who are interested in your company. And if you don't mind, if you can send some contact details, I will pass them to those people.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Singh, for joining today, and good to see you. Appreciate this. Next, I see a hand up from Van at Cargill. Van?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Minister. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be with you both. Cargill, as you may or may not know, is a large agriculture and food company all around the globe. As it relates to Iraq, I just offer two comments / questions. One is, I'd be interested in Your Excellency's assessment of agriculture. You mentioned it a bit earlier. I have some colleagues who are particularly interested in the dairy and aqua area, aqua development in Iraq. And so I'm just curious whether you have any thoughts on the development in those areas in the agricultural sector. And then the second piece is, I know the U.S. Wheat Associates and some other U.S. companies, including Cargill, have been working for some time to try to increase U.S. wheat exports to Iraq and achieve some financing opportunity with the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And we keep hearing there's tenders that may be coming and not, but it hasn't happened yet, and it may not be in your portfolio. But just to let you know that I think there are continued interest by U.S. companies to continue to be a supplier of grain to Iraq. And so I'll stop there, but thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you a part of this, and we appreciate and wish you great success as you work on the planning and development of the country. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you and your company in Iraq very soon.
Full disclosure, the minister has a farm. A big one.
Yes, I do.
Well, I thought it was very interesting, Van. You mentioned the aqua farming, and in Your Excellency or Ambassador, Your Excellency, as Ambassador, Mr. Minister, I mean, is that an area of growth opportunity? With we're all familiar with the Maskouf, but is that a significant investment opportunity for a company like Cargill and others in the agriculture space? Do you see that? And then the dairy, is there growth potential there? Are there opportunities?
Well, if you don't mind, I want to comment. Iraq, like some countries, especially in agriculture, the farmers, they think the government should support them with everything. With this government, we start to reduce the support from the input, and we still support the output of their farms. So gradually, year after year, maybe it takes around 4 to 5 years, the support for the input should be zero. So that will give a very big opportunity for the private sector to be in the Iraqi private sector. I mean, agricultural private sector. If we are talking about some seed, seed, now the production of Iraq more than 5 million tons, which needs, for machines and for good quality of seeds and all these for the chemicals. And I think after 4 years, when the government wouldn't support the farms and the agriculture sector, there would be a very good opportunity for the private sector companies. So I ask my friend just to study the Iraqi market to be the first in there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And I have to say, I grew up on a farm myself, so it's always good to get. It's always fun to get farmers together and tell stories, as my dad liked to say. I'd love to turn. I know we have our friends from our chamber affiliate, the Center for International Private Enterprise, on. If I can turn to Steve Roseland. Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Steve, for the opportunity. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. As a nonprofit affiliate of the U.S. Chamber, as Steve mentioned, working to promote democracy through private enterprise and market-oriented reforms. We're active in more than 50 countries around the world. And in Iraq since 2003, we've worked with a variety of business associations and economic think tanks on a number of advocacy initiatives. Currently, we're supporting provincial business coalitions to advocate for decentralization, improved transparency in revenue sharing in particular, and other governance reforms. And then at the national level, we're supporting private sector actors to articulate priorities for economic recovery and development, especially where there's alignment with the government's economic reform white paper. Your Excellency, your ministry is establishing a private sector council as a way of fostering a greater role for the Iraqi private sector in policy planning. Could you give us an update on the status of this council, the prospects as you see them for closer cooperation between the public and private sectors in implementing the economic reform roadmap and the role of this council moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't know anyone do know about the private sector council, so I'm happy to hear that from you. Well, actually, when I appointed as a minister, I started to review the files that I should work on. And the first question came to my mind, how the Ministry of Planning, which is responsible to support the private sector, work with this file. And I have found that there is a very good strategy for improving the private sector has been done 2012 with supporting of, I think, UNDP and other international organizations. And one of the outcome of this strategic study is to establish this council. And the second question to my people and to myself, why you didn't do it? And they say there are such problem, obstacles, political issues, and I've been working for that for 6 months, and I formed the private sector council, which is temporary, because I hated this council. I believe that the government should be just support the private sector. We don't be involved with those people. Private sector should lead the private sector. The job of the government is to facilitate the problems, just to remove the obstacles that facing the private sector movement. So it's been formed, and now for the last 3 months, now we've been working how to form the legislation of law for this council when the internal system, including a couple of weeks or less than a month, the internal system will be approved, and we're starting to take their responsibilities to interact with the Iraqi private sector, and goes outside the Iraq just to present the opportunities to make a joint venture with international companies. So within a month will be very obvious work with this council.
Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, I have to say, in a prior life, I used to work at the U.S. Department of Commerce and in the International Trade Administration, and there we had a series of what we called international trade advisory committees, which were essentially councils of private sector companies that would provide input to the U.S. government through the U.S. Department of Commerce on a range of issues, either sector or thematic based. So it's great to see, you know, such an entity being devised. So I think, as having been involved in that from the government side, it was very worthwhile, you know, to have that kind of direct input and to have that exchange back and forth. So credit to you. Your Excellencies, with I see 2 more hands up, if we can squeeze them both in before we close up here. First, I'd like to go to Dr. Ali. Ali, I was going to ask you a question that I saw you put in the chat box, but Your Excellency, I think this will probably be about the health sector, but Ali, I'll let you pose it.
Thank you very much, Steve. Nice to meet you all, and nice to meet the Minister and Mr. Ambassador here. Hopefully this will be a productive meeting. I have 2 points actually to be pointed that we are facing now. In entering new pharmaceutical US companies into the Iraqi market and the Ministry of Health. In general, the Iraqi routine inside the Ministry of Health, till now, it's not a US friendly, attractive registration process and paper passing. The US companies, as it's FDA approved, top level companies in the world, for the sake of the Iraqi people, health, and getting the good drug to the Iraqi patients, must have the priorities in everything. They should decrease the requirement of documentation to the US companies, because it's already passed all the documentation on all the world. It's an FDA approved. This is number 1. And hope the Prime Minister, the Minister here, can push over to let the Ministry of Health forward and give the prioritization for the US companies. There is no box of 10. There is no need for a lot of documentation. As long as the company have an FDA approved, they can check it in the website. No need for legalization, because our companies now is facing, they hate legalizations in the Iraqi embassy in the USA. Iraqi embassy legalization in the USA have been a struggle. The person must go to the embassy, must submit the cash and papers. It's a lot of money to them. So many companies is facing a lot of issues in legalizing the papers for registration inside the Iraqi Ministry of Health and the Iraqi US Embassy in Washington. So please accept it to be sent by mail or service, and let the payment be online so we can speed the process up. I have papers that left over for 2 years in the process. waiting for legalizations, and companies hate to do the process. So please, in this meeting, I hope we can push things forward, because I am sure entering healthcare US companies in the Iraqi market will push the market forward, will create more jobs, and will be beneficial to both sides. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. As far as I understood that there are 2 points, maybe there was a noise and the voice, it's not clear for me. You have been talking about 2 points. The first one about the health medical care, and the other thing about the medicines. Am I right?
Yeah, I think a big part of it, Your Excellency, if I may interview, it's a question of, for lack of a better term, automation or digitization of processes which have previously required wet signatures and physical forms. So I think that's a big part.
Yeah, I got the point. In Iraq, we've got 2 ministries are responsible for recording or approving the companies, which is Ministry of Health and Ministry of Trade. To be honest, I'm not familiar with the details of this process, because this is the responsibility of the Ministry of Trade. But this is the first time I heard there's a problem with this, because I'm headed the Trade Council of Iraq and Egypt, Iraq and Jordan. Most of our imports for the medicines from those both countries, there is no problem. But I will check that with the Minister of Trade and Minister of Health. If we can help, I don't think we will stop providing our help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I would say to Ambassador Yassine's credit, to the U.S. Embassy and Baghdad's credit, during the throes of the pandemic, there was actually, I think, a real big effort by the government to move towards an e-system. And I think we've proved that actually that system worked well during the crisis of a pandemic. So I think there's an interest in keeping something like that in place and not reverting back. But we understand that might require legislation or to put it in place on the permanent nature. But I do think we've proven that it can be successful and that it can work in a crisis like that. So I just note that.
Iraqi people like stamps and like to see their signatures everywhere. So unless you've seen signatures and so many stamps, this is a good thing. To be honest, this is shame for, we are in the 21 and for some documents, it's been requested for the real document. Many people, they don't accept sending email, even if it's an official email. But yeah, we are working hardly to cope up with the world. Yeah. We cannot solve everything within just for 1 year.
Very true, very true. Well, next, Your Excellency, turn to Matt. I see a hand at Baker Hughes, and then we'll do the speed round. Dr. Miri, I saw from the Chaldean Foundation is pinged as well. So those will be our final 2 questions. So Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And I'll keep it exceptionally brief. This is Matt Armstrong with Baker Hughes. I just didn't want to miss the opportunity personally, Minister, to thank you and the Ministry of Planning for all of your help in getting our flare gas to power project with South Gas Company underway in the Nasiriyah area, and Ambassador Yassine, especially to you as well, for all your personal work and the work of the embassy, getting that project across the finish line and into execution. It's been a challenging environment to start the project, but we are in execution and very excited about the potential to start generating power from Iraq's excess gas. So again, thank you for all the support over the months, and back to you, Steve.
Well, I'll leave it to the Minister, Ambassador. I don't know if you're welcome to react to that as you'd like.
This, and it does me helped my purpose when I talked to the Biden administration to tell them that we're doing what we need to do in order to reduce our carbon footprint. So companies that help us, capture our flare gas, convert it into electricity, are doing us a favor locally, are doing Iraqi citizens a favor, and are doing our reputation a favor. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
And as you know, that's been a priority of the council on so many different levels. Dr. Amiri, you're gonna, no pressure, but last question or comment to you before we close out.
Yes, thank you, Steve, and I will make it very brief. Thank you, Ambassador Yassin, for excellent work and service at the embassy. We are proud that you represent us. Dr. Najm, welcome and greetings from the US and Michigan. I just want you to know that we have the largest and most able Chamber of Commerce outside Iraq. We are all, most of us are business-oriented people. The Iraqi community in Michigan alone, which is about 160,000 people, contribute to the local economy $1.6 billion a year. This is more than the budget of Lebanon and Syria put together. And it's all private sector. In fact, we formed recently a council, and we are proud that we joined the US Chamber with our council to facilitate business in Iraq, help small and medium-sized American companies set foot in Iraq. Because really we combine the business philosophies as well as the strength of our economy here. And we would like you to use us. I mean, I'd like you to think in your planning and in your engineering, and you combine both, how to tap into the Iraqi Americans in the diaspora. We come free. We have all the talents that the country can need. We are bicultural. We have relationships in the United States, and we have relationships in Iraq. So it's an invitation to use us, and it is for free. And I'd like to hear your comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm proud of you and your colleagues and with this big contribution. This is the first time I've heard about this. I'm really proud of it. And I invite you to join the Iraqi private sector just to provide us with a representative from you. I think it would be a very good chance to rub your shoulders with the Iraqi people and to be a part of the Iraqi trade society.
I welcome that. I think it's an excellent start.
Yeah, thank you very much. Delicate, just send the name to the Mr. Ambassador. I will agree. I'm agree right now. Just send you are responsible for just provide me with your representative. I will agree directly.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
And this is invitation is expanded to other, if there is any society, whether inside the USA or outside the USA, just our job to connect the Iraqi people and our friends from outside Iraq to work together to facilitate all these kind of trade issues.
Gladly, as we say in Iraq, one hand cannot clap. We need both together.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are in need for more than the second hand. 3 or 4 hands would be better, just to make it loudly clouded.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Minister, Ambassador, would love I'd love to give you the floor one final time for any final words or thoughts that you might have before we all go back to our days. But we really have appreciated you taking time to be with us, providing kind of your overview on a range of topics and sectors. We've really covered a lot of ground today, I think. And I do think we have some important follow-up items that we can do with you, Mr. Minister. So let me turn back to you for any final parting words that you may have for us to take home.
Well, for me, thank you very much for your time and all the other guys. Personally, I have got some benefit from the comments. I wrote down some notes. Always the negotiation and present the problems will lead us to find solutions. If we keep silent, we don't find out the solution. because we don't know the problem. So thank you very much, and the thanks should go to the ambassador and the staff for the embassy, for the technical staff, and thank you very much for the internet, who makes it very easy for us to communicate for each other. Thank you very much. The word is for you.
There's not much I can add. I just want to give greetings to our compatriots in Michigan and elsewhere in the United States. And it is part of the embassy's plan to reach out as much as possible to them. They make us very proud.
Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for spending time and making time to be with us today. We will absolutely follow up from this conversation on several of the points raised, and we do appreciate the strong sentiment and the idea that we can grow, the U.S.-Iraq relationship across a range of opportunities. So we look forward to working with you, and thank you both for all that you're doing and for your time today. And we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. And with that, we'll conclude the session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.